It is a crazy time in the world of the Pokemon TCG. The Pokemon Company International just announced when rotation is happening outside of Japan. Within Japan, they know when their rotation is, and it's happening at the end of the month, and Prismatic Evolutions is just around the corner. So today, before all of the chaos ensues, I wanted to take a couple of minutes to answer your questions. I'm Jet from inthirdperson.com. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel. Thank you to everybody that submitted a question for this Q&A. Apologies to anyone whose question I couldn't get to. Also, if you have any questions you'd like to add for a future video, ask them in the comments below. Starry Skies 6510 asks, what's a good meta deck to build for TCG after rotation for a beginner? Now, rotation does put a monkey wrench into things, right? Unfortunately, we're going to be losing a bunch of cards very soon. We also don't know what the new cards are going to be. At least we've seen some, but we don't know the full extent of the cards that are going to be in the coming set. So the way the meta is right now is going to shift. So it's kind of hard to predict where things are ultimately going to land. Because of that, I am reluctant to fully answer that question, but I can say with some confidence that I'm pretty sure that Charizard EX is probably still going to be really good and probably your best bet as a starting deck. At its core, Charizard has not rotated and it's an excellent attacker. Also, you get Pidgeot EX, and Pidgeot EX is just one of the best search engines in the game. And as long as you've got those two together, you can figure some things out. And I think it's going to be a really strong core going into this next rotation. The only thing I think that could really hold it back is some new amazing grass deck, which we just have not seen in years and years. On top of all that, you can go to the store right now and just buy a Charizard League battle deck like the one I've got in the back over here and have yourself an amazing foundation for a meta deck. It is the best pre-constructed deck that Pokemon have ever put out, and you're getting a majority of cards that you would need in a meta Charizard deck in that box over there. So as a beginner, I think the best place to start is Charizard. It's a very strong deck, probably going to be really strong post-rotation. It's a deck that can be very versatile and be built a lot of different ways, and you can tech it out to match whatever the meta is at the time. And on top of that, you can just go to a store and buy this box and have most of the cards at it's a lot more convenient than trying to buy all the singles, and you're getting some awesome cards in here and pretty much everything you need to start. One other note that I'm going to throw out here, and this is a little bit speculative, but at some point after rotation, depending on the release schedule on Pokemon side, we're also expecting a new League battle deck at some point in the spring. Pretty much anywhere between April and July, we're probably going to be getting another League battle deck. Now, I made a bunch of predictions on what I think it could be, but I would also suspect that if you're going to wait a little longer to buy a beginner deck, whatever is coming next might also be a very strong option. Sage6461 asks, what are some good cards to replace the staples leaving after rotation? Lumineon, Rotom, Pokestop, etc. We also got like a similar question. This one's more specific to Goldango from ASPB7HQ, who asks, how would you build Goldango EX after rotation? I'm currently using the Sacramento Regional third place list with a ton of success. And I think this is the big question right now in the community, is how do we update these existing decks that are losing cards to rotation? And I'm sorry to disappoint, but we're not going to answer that question just yet. And the reason we're not going to do that just yet is that we don't have a full understanding of what the card pool is going to look like post-rotation. Just as we lose cards to rotation, we're also getting new cards from Journey Together, and there is a chance that some of those Journey Together cards are going to end up in the existing decks. So I don't want to necessarily spitball out here and say like, oh yeah, maybe Cycling Road is going to see more play, or the Rev-of-Room where you discard an energy and draw until you have 6 cards in your hand, TM Evo. Those are all like great speculative choices on what could be bigger cards going forward, but we're going to get more definitive answers in the very near future. Japan's rotation is happening at the end of the month with the release of Battle Partners, and when that set drops, we're going to have a lot of time to see what's happening in Japan and look at their tournament results, and I'm going to cover all of that here on this channel. Last year, we did post-rotation previews for every meta deck and a bunch of rogue decks as well, and we're going to do that again this year because the community really liked that, and being able to see multiple permutations of any given deck and see how they're being built alongside of tournament results in Japan, I think is incredibly helpful for the community. So I know everybody wants to answer this question now. I don't know what to do with my Charizard deck. I bought it and now I don't know where the Luminion and the Rotom, and how do I... It's okay. Also, you probably want a Cleffa, but again, speculation on my part. I think Cleffa is going to end up being a staple in Charizard going forward, but give it a couple of weeks. Battle Partners is going to drop in Japan, and the month of February and March on this channel here is going to be almost entirely post-rotation content, looking at tons of deck lists for every archetype, and we can more definitively answer what these decks are going to look like post-rotation. Mark27571 asks, what are some good consistent draw engines that aren't going away with the upcoming rotation? So I actually went through the card pool to answer this question. I pulled up pretty much every card that can, like every Pokemon that can draw cards. And some of these are varying degrees of good. So I'm just going to run through this. I'm going to go in alphabetical order because the way my photos have it all lined up in the folder are all in alpha order. So we can start things off with Blissey EX, which can draw up to 6 cards after using its attack return. Understanding that Blissey is a colorless Pokemon and a lot of decks are not going to want to run Blissey, but it is a way of drawing cards. Dodrio lets you put a damage counter on the Dodrio itself and also draw a card. Its attack is not bad either. For just 1 energy, does 10 damage and 30 more damage for each damage counter on this Pokemon. So you can potentially do upwards of 280 damage with this Pokemon before any damage modifiers, while also drawing an extra card per turn. Dracloak has that Recon directive ability where you can look at the top 2 cards of your deck, put 1 into your hand, and put 1 into the bottom of your deck. This is at this point primarily reserved for Dragapult decks, but there might be some Dragapult plus other combo that can benefit from having the Dracloaks in there. And there might even be a world where Dracloak is played as a draw engine for a deck that's not running Dragapult either. Who knows? The Dunsparce is a very cool one where your Dunsparce can shuffle it and any cards attached to it back into the deck and then draw 3 cards. Fezandipity, of course, is already a tournament staple, and it's going to continue to be this way going forward. With one of your Pokemon getting knocked out on the previous turn, Fezandipity EX can help you draw 3 cards. Goldengo EX draws cards with its coin bonus ability. If it's in the active, it draws 2 cards. If it's on the bench, it draws 1. I don't see it becoming just a draw engine for another deck, but if you are playing Goldengo, you've got built-in draw support there. Greninja EX's Shinobi Blade attack for only 1 water energy lets you search your deck for a card and then shuffle your deck. This has been teched into current Palkia Dusknoir builds. Maybe we'll see a Greninja build rise up. I've even seen some weird Greninja Charizard decks that have this as an attacker. So this is technically a way of drawing cards as well. Mew EX lets you draw until you've got 3 cards in your hand. When you evolve from Hoot Hoot into Noctowl, you can grab 2 trainer cards of your choice as long as you've got a Terra Pokemon on your bench or in the active. As long as there's a Terra Pokemon in play, you can grab 2 trainer cards when you evolve up to Noctowl. Pelipper is a card that doesn't see any competitive play right now, but maybe that changes in the future. When you evolve up from Wingull to Pelipper, you can grab a supporter card from either your deck or your discard pile. Pidgeot EX is one of the best draw engines in the game. Quick Search allows you to grab any card from your deck and put it into your hand. Quaquaval is one that has the up-tempo ability where you take a card from your hand, put it to the bottom of your deck, and then draw until you have 5 cards in your hand. I've only seen this once, and it looked like it was on a meme deck. I'm not sure if I buy this as a viable draw engine, but it is an option in the format. Revavroom lets you discard an energy card, at which point you then get to draw up to 6 cards in your hand. This hasn't seen a lot of play. I thought this would see more play leading up to now, and if the current pool of draw engines stays a little short, maybe Revavroom will find a home finally. Squovit lets you shuffle your hand, put it to the bottom of your deck, and then draw a total of 1 card. This paired incredibly well with Bibarel, but with Bibarel not in the format anymore, Squovit's probably a lot worse, though I'm sure there are ways you can combo Squovit into a better draw option. Squawkabilly EX only works on the first turn of the game, but on that first turn, if you put this into play, you can use its ability that lets you discard your hand and draw 6 cards. Tatsugiri has that attract customers ability where you can look at the top 6 cards of your deck and grab a supporter you find there and put it into your hand. This has seen play in mostly Dragapult decks, but it does see play in other decks as well. And assuming the format doesn't get more draw, it will get more draw support. But for the time being, I could see a world where Tatsugiri sees more play. Teal Mask Ogerpon lets you attach a grass energy to Teal Mask Ogerpon and then draw a card. Tinkaton lets you discard a card and draw 3 cards. Unfortunately, Tinkaton hasn't been used as just as a draw engine. It's always in the context of a Tinkaton EX deck, and Tinkaton EX decks, while being fan favorites, haven't really cracked the competitive scene just yet. Let's not forget Xatu, which is the last one on my list. This lets you attach a basic psychic energy to one of your Pokemon on the bench while also drawing 2 cards. While putting together the answers for this draw engine question, I totally forgot to look at the new cards. I looked entirely at the existing card pool and was like, here's all the draw engine cards. But I also forgot N's Zoroark EX. Now, this one only really works if you're playing an N deck, but Zoroark EX has the amazing trade ability where you can discard a card and draw 2 cards. This is what Kirlia has right now, and it kind of sucks that Kirlia or the Gardevoir deck is losing that engine, but it is coming back specifically to N's deck. Those are the draw engines that I was able to find. Some of these are definitely better than others, and I'm certain we're going to see more in the new cards coming in the near future. Fabay215 asks, how can I stop Budew if I play a Charizard EX deck? This is going to be a very relevant question as Budew enters our format very soon. It is a Pokemon with only 30 HP and its attack only does 10 damage, but it has item lock attached to that attack, and it's for 0 energy as well, so a lot of decks are going to be adopting Budew. Now, I did a preview video of Prismatic Evolutions and what all the decks look like going forward, and I'm going to pull some of the things from the Charizard lists that I saw. If you want to watch the full video, definitely check out, I'll put the thumbnail over here, but check this out in the description. I'll put a link to that as well. But Charizard specific answers, I think some of the big ones is making sure you have your middle evolution Pokemon in there. So make sure you've got a Charmeleon in there, which a lot of Charizard decks had at least 1, maybe you consider 2. But the big one is Pidgeotto. Pidgeotto is a card that we have not had in Charizard decks, and that seems to be the standard going forward. Even if you're not running this particular tech, Grand Tree. Now, Grand Tree lets you, when it's in play, you can evolve your basic Pokemon into a stage 1 from a card off the deck, and then evolve up to stage 2. And even if you get item locked, you can evolve up to a Charizard or a Pidgeot through Grand Tree. And that is a great way of circumventing the item lock. Now, keep in mind is that you can't attach energy with Charizard's ability if you use the Grand Tree, because Grand Tree pulls the cards directly from the deck onto the board, and Charizard's ability only activates if you play it from your hand to the board. So if you're going to evolve up Charizard with Grand Tree, make sure you've attached an energy to that Charmander on the previous turn so that you can get the full effect of Grand Tree. But regardless, Grand Tree is a potential option for Charizard to get your evolutions out so that you can not worry as much about the item lock. Another tech I've seen is Pokemon League Headquarters. This is a stadium where it forces both players' basic Pokemon to need 1 extra energy to attack. Now, Budew is easy to cover. Its attack is already 0 energy, so you only need 1 to attack. But by putting that stadium in play, you're forcing your opponent to attach from hand to that Budew, and that gives them 1 less energy on their actual attacking Pokemon. So you are still technically slowing them down a turn, even if they are attaching and item locking you in return. So those are just a couple of options that I have seen. Depending on the deck, the tech is going to be different. For example, Goldengo, I've seen them run Crispin as a way of being able to attach energy to a Goldengo, plus have an energy to knock out the Budew in the active. I've also seen a lot of Monkey Dory in a lot of decks that did not run Monkey Dory before as a means of taking Budew out. Light Shade of Plays asks, what is the best way to start building a deck on your own? Deck building is a really tough subject to talk about, and I've poked at it once or twice of like, here's a couple of general tips for how to build a deck, but it always feels like there's so many situations and permutations, and it's really hard to make just the here's how you build a good deck. But in the context of this question, what is the best way to start building a deck on your own? I think the answer is learn a good deck. Go to Limitless, look at the decks that are performing well. You can check out my channel. You can go to any of the other ones online. Shoutouts to Tricky Jim, Little Dark Fury, For the Win TCG, Omnipoke, Celio's Network. There are so many awesome creators who are covering Pokemon TCG decks and deck profiles out there that are sharing that knowledge with the community. And yeah, pick one of those decks and learn it. Master it, and from there that will help you understand, like, how does this one deck that I'm playing work? What are the pieces? What are the exact cards? And why do I have 3 copies of this card and 4 copies of that card? And why can I get away with only 1 copy of this other one? So master that deck, understand why that person had built it the way they did, understand your matchups, at which point, like, I don't think you have to learn every single deck in the game in order to then be good at building your own decks. But I do think that you, at the very least, have to understand how a competitive deck is built before you can build one yourself. And the best way to do that is to actually play with a competitive build and then using that knowledge to then build another deck. Heretic Corpse asks, in the Miraidon deck, is there a substitute for Iron Hands? Because I don't own an Iron Hands card. So I think this is a question, like, this type of question is one that I see a lot of, like, I don't have this card. Is there some sort of substitute for this card? And the answer is almost always no. Pokemon doesn't really recycle abilities. They don't just make, here's a version of it, and then we're going to make a better version of it, and then we're also going to make a worse version of that thing. There's always differences. Maybe you'll have the same ability, but then this is a grass one, and this one's a fire one. This one might be a stage 2, and it draws more cards. But this specific combination of attributes, whether it's the high HP on a big basic or taking extra prizes with an attack, we don't really have that in our game right now besides Iron Hands EX. So if you're playing a deck where Iron Hands EX is beneficial to you, I would strongly recommend that you just get an Iron Hands EX and not try and find some sort of substitute, because there's really nothing in the format that will act as a good replacement for what Iron Hands specifically brings to the table. And pretty much for any card in the Pokemon TCG, if you're like, I don't have this card, can I find a cheaper or like a cheaper substitute for it? The answer is probably no, just because the Pokemon game doesn't really work like that, and they don't really overlap in the same way. So if you need the thing, just go grab the thing. As Chargers 6510 asks, with the new Trainers Pokemon decks coming out soon, which decks, if any, do you think have competitive potential? We have seen some new deck archetypes tied to Trainers Pokemon. So we've seen Lily's deck with the Clefairy. We've seen N's deck with the Zoroark. Those all have their pros and cons, but the one I'm most excited for is Hop. Now, Hop as a trainer in the Scarlet and Violet games, I don't really think too much of. He kind of just spends the entire game getting his butt kicked by you the entire time, but his deck looks sick in Pokemon TCG, where that Zacian EX looks like it's got a spread attack. It has a really strong attack to the active that can get boosted multiple times over, right? Like Hop's deck gets its own Choice Band for plus 30 damage. It gets its own Stadium for plus 30 damage. It gets Snorlax for another plus 30 damage. And this isn't just tied to Zacian either. You can also get these benefits with other Pokemon such as the Cramorant that also benefits from being in this archetype. And we also saw Hop get Hop's Bag, which lets you grab 2 basic Pokemon from your deck and put them directly on your bench. This is a huge upgrade from the Buddy Buddy Poffin we've seen, because this isn't limited to Pokemon with 70 HP or less. You can just put down your Zacian EX and your Snorlax with this card. It's basically Battle VIP Pass specifically for Hop's deck, but it's also better than Battle VIP Pass because you can play this at any point in the game and not just the first turn of the game. Incredibly powerful card, and it's all specifically tied to just Hop, and like Hop's cards are absolutely busted. So I'm really excited to play the Hop deck. Not to say that I'm not excited for the other ones. I am someone who loves lightning decks, and I think Belly Bolt could be cool with all of that extra energy acceleration. I wouldn't be surprised to see Miraidon EX somehow work its way into that deck. Being able to help get those basic lightning Pokemon down could make Belly Bolt run a little smoother. I think that Clefairy EX has some amazing tools for, not Clefairy EX, but the Lily deck has amazing tools for setup, and Clefairy can do a ton of damage potentially. And then for the Ends Zoroark deck, or Ends deck, I think that format has a ton of potential. We've seen Fusion Strike do incredibly well, one of the best decks of all time, and End's new deck is basically a version of Fusion Strike, but we just haven't seen the ideal attacker for it. It does have a bunch of attackers right now, but they're all very situational in one way or another. We haven't seen that like money attack where I'm just like, yes, I want to copy that more often than not. ADP Master 4248 asks, has anything been leaked yet about when Pokemon TCG Pocket will introduce trading? So as far as the specific release date, we don't have that set in stone just yet, but it is expected to coincide with the launch of the January set, which is supposed to come out at the end of January. And I'm really excited for trading in Pokemon TCG Pocket, really hoping to fill out my collection so that I can build decks. And there has been some rumors about how trading will work. It is, right now, it's rumors and speculation, and I'm not going to put that information here because we don't know how real it is. And just in case the Pokemon police, if Big Pikachu is watching, I'm not gonna blow up your cover here. So just, if you want to find that information, there are places out there that are talking about the leaks. I will not be talking about the leaks this time, but once we do have official information on how trading will work and all those details, we will talk about it here on the channel. JDog Plays 70 asks, which cards will you miss the most after rotation? This is a fantastic question, and we've talked a lot about rotation here. We did a video a couple of weeks ago on the top 20 cards, the best cards going away. I also did a video recently where I covered every good card that is rotating, and that video is almost 2 hours long. If you missed it, links will be in the description of this one. I wanted to mix it up a little bit, share some personal stories and some of my history with the game. The first one we're going to go with is actually not that deep. It's Arceus V-Star. It just had a really phenomenal attack, being able to do 180 damage. It was technically 200. Double Turbo Energy brought that down by 20. Solid amount of damage, but you got a ton of energy acceleration, and I cannot stress how good that energy acceleration was for the game, because being able to accelerate 3 energy to your Pokemon V on the bench in any way you like just fundamentally changed the game where it was at the time. Arceus V-Star just became a solid attacker that could be very tanky with combinations of Sharon's Care, while also being an energy acceleration engine to every Pokemon V that was in the game at the time. And you could plug in almost any Pokemon V with Arceus V-Star and make that card at least playable. And there were so many different combinations, from Duraludon, Umbreon, Giratina, and so many more Arceus decks that were able to exist and thrive because Arceus was in the game. And it made the game so much better when things were just getting very stale and Arceus was just like, yeah, take me and then take this entire card pool, and now we can like make all of these cards work. And I'm going to miss Arceus for that. It was an awesome card, and unfortunately just kind of got power crept out of the game in the last year. Another one I'm going to miss, and this one's still a meta relevant card, it's Raichu V. This is a card that I believed in from the very beginning. And if you do not believe me, you can go all the way back to my videos from years ago where, despite it not really having a home, I was making videos with Raichu V and Raikou as their own deck with the Flaffy engine. And I knew at its core this card was good and it had a good attack. It just did not have the right home at the time until Miraidon showed up. And since then, Miraidon, like Raichu, has been a really good tech attacker in that deck as your big end game one-hit KO on anything. And I've loved that it's seen success and it's won regional championships and international championships. But I'll always have a soft spot in my heart because I was there before Raichu V was cool and making it happen when it really didn't have any business to be played at that time, but I still found ways to make it awesome. The last one I'm going to shout out here is a very weird one. This is Lucario V-Star. Now, for most players, you never really saw this card do anything, but there was a brief moment in time around the time this came out where Lucario V-Star was surprisingly good. Being able to swing for 240 damage on a Pokemon V was nuts. There was Arceus everywhere, so you're one-hit KOing Arceus V-Star, and on top of that, yeah, you were also just one-hit KOing a lot of the basic Vs as well. And I think arguably my favorite deck of all time, almost up there with Mew VMAX, was this counter box deck I had made with Arceus plus Lucario plus Hoopa. And that was a deck that actually won like a special event or a regionals in Latin America. It didn't really see much play outside of that, but I remember grinding PTCGO for hours and hours during that few week stretch where that was just my all-time favorite deck to play. And maybe not all time, it was up there, top 2 favorite decks to play. Arceus to accelerate energy, Lucario to hit Vs really hard will also counter other Arceuses, and then Hoopa V was in there because it was Psychic and Dark at the same time, so you could one-shot Rapid Strike Urshifu and Mew VMAX with the same card, and you just kind of covered so much of the meta with that deck, and it was awesome. Whew, that was a lot. There was a lot of questions. Thank you all for asking, taking the time out to share a question with me. And I apologize to anyone whose questions I did not get to. But if you've got any more questions, feel free to leave them in the comments of this video, and I will try and get to them in the next Q&A. But for now, I gotta get going. Thank you so much for watching. You can find me on all the things: YouTube, TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram at @InThirdPerson. You can find me on Twitch at @InThirdPerson, where I normally stream the Pokemon trading card game every Sunday at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. I unfortunately missed the last stream because of events happening for my son's birthday, and I'm gonna miss the next Sunday because of events relating to my son's birthday. I know. He's an awesome kid. He deserves it. I will be back on the stream at the last Sunday of the month of January. And then you can also check me out on the website, inthirdperson.com, for more articles and videos on video games, board games, and other nerdy pursuits. So until the next one, I'll see you later. Bye-bye.